Hello everyone, this video is going to be loads of fun because in this video, not only I'm going to show you a new beautiful piano instrument for Halion and Halion Sonic. We're talking about the Swiss Grand 1860 from Realsamples. This is a beautiful historical grand piano from Huni and Hubert, made in Zurich. It's such a special sounding piano. But in this video, I'm also going to give you some tips on how to mix solo piano in general, especially when we're talking about solo piano or pianos where you can find in ballad pieces or things like that, where the piano has a very important role in a track. So I'm going to start playing a little bit with this piano, and I'm going to give you an example of how a piano that's really characterful sounds like and how you can treat this when you're mixing. So I'm going to play a little bit. This is the initial preset. So as you can see, there's a lot of character to this piano. We have very few controls, but one of my favorite is, as you know, the pedal noise. So this sounds like this. I'm going to press the pedal now. I'm going to bring it up. We can also change the pitch. We are at 440 Hertz right now, so standard tuning, and we can also tweak the release and the decay. So that's the key release. And these are all very beautiful sounds. Now, another thing that you can do is we can go to our master effects, and here we can add an EQ. We can also change the width of the piano. And we can also add a little bit of reverb. So we can go from studio, chamber, and hall. So now I want to share a few tips when you want to mix a piano like this in a real life scenario. And I'm going to start with the first tip. And the first tip is respect the noise, respect the character of the piano, respect all those beautiful elements that make this instrument an organic sound, a beautiful instrument that's alive. And this is, of course, respecting the pedal noise, respecting the key release noise, all these things. So if you remove all these and you add, I don't know, gate, or you just turn them down, this will take away from the character of the piano. So I would say leave those alone, but for this first tip, I want to also say that if you want and you feel that you need it for a production, maybe you want to go ahead and add a little bit of filtering. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring up my frequency EQ right here in Cubase. As you can see, I have a filter activated. This is a low cut filter, and I'm doing just a very mild cut in the subs. So I'm just cleaning up the low end really that contains a little bit of rumble from the recordings and all these things. When you record an instrument like this, you want to leave everything in. You don't tamper with the sound. And this is what we have right here as well. So I would say try and play the whole piece and see what's the lowest note. If the lowest note is this one, you know, I just want to make sure I don't butcher this note. But if the lowest note is this one in the piece, now I can go a little bit higher maybe. So I'm going to clean up the sound like this. The second tip that I want to give you for piano processing is, again, EQing. And this is try and use broad strokes with the piano. When you're processing a piano, you have to think about it like EQing a full orchestra. It's a very wide range of frequencies. There are many overtones, there are resonances, there are noises. It's so rich. It's one of the richest instruments that you can ever mix. And you want to make sure that you don't butcher the quality of the piano, because then you end up with lifeless piano sounds. Of course, unless you want to have a very specific bright pop sound, like, I don't know, a house piano, then that's fine. You can be a little bit more aggressive. But in general, I would try and be very, very broad with my EQ strokes. One of my favorite EQs for pianos when it comes to analog EQs is the one that I have right here in front of me, the Manley Massive Passive. And also the Mazalek is beautiful for the pianos because they have really beautiful curves, and especially for the Manley Massive Passive, because it's parallel EQ, the bands interact with each other, and this works great for pianos. But even if you work with a digital EQ, right here again I have frequency. If you want to make a piano brighter, just use wide strokes, so wide cues. Let's try this one. So let's try with and without. And talking about broad strokes, one of my other favorite EQ styles to use on pianos are the Pultec style EQs. And we have one in Cubase. This is the EQ P1A. And as you can see, what I'm doing here is I'm adding a generous boost in the low end. I'm also adding the attenuation in the same frequency. So we get this kind of beautiful low end, but without making the sound too muddy. And then I'm adding quite a bit of boost with the high end. So let's listen to this now. Without. And with. And listen to this low end. It's a beautiful way to add depth and body to a piano, the Pultec style EQs. And pianos take EQing really nicely, but you have to be careful with narrow EQs because then you start highlighting overtones and sometimes it might sound a little bit unpleasant. Another thing that you might want to do in this case is you might want to add also a low pass filter. So in this case, I'm going to add again a cut at the very top end. Again, 6 dBs per octave. Because most of the times, pianos don't have so much top end. They don't extend so high all the way up to 10 to 20K. And most of the times, if you record a piano, you will find that in this frequency range, when you start boosting, you're going to introduce noise. So this way, you're actually getting rid of the noise and your sound will still sound nice and bright. So that's the second tip. The third tip that I want to give you is all about compression. And this is, again, something that you should be very gentle when it comes to pianos. Pianos are percussive instruments, basically. So you have a hammer that hits a string. So if you use very fast compression, or compression with very fast release and very fast attack, your sound is going to sound really muffled, is going to sound squashed straight away, much more easier than it would sound on a vocal or, I don't know, a violin or a snare even. So for example, here's one compressor that I like using for pianos. This is the tube compressor from Cubase. This is the stock compressor. And what I'm doing, you will notice that I have a relatively medium attack, around 30 milliseconds, and that depends on the piano, of course, and then a slow release. Sometimes I like to use the auto release as well, but I don't want to have a very fast release, because otherwise you're going to get pumping, and this doesn't sound pleasant on pianos. It just gives it a little bit of this kind of strained sound. So let's activate this compressor and see how it sounds. And see, I'm compressing 2 to 3 dBs, but I'm getting a nice bite out of the sound. Another tip that I want to give you when it comes to compression for pianos is use sidechaining on your compressor if it has one. In this case, with the tube compressor, we have this, and I'm using a high-pass filter for the detection circuit. And I'm not letting the low end get to the compressor's detection circuit. So that doesn't mean that the compressor doesn't compress the low end, but that means that if I play a low note right here, it's not gonna trigger the compressor so much that it will choke the sound. So let me show you how it sounds without. And with the high pass filter. See, it doesn't compress as much, which means that if I have high notes, they're not going to be muffled because I play this low end right here. And this lets the piano breathe quite a bit. Try it out and you'll be amazed on how much better your compressors will work with this huge frequency range that the piano possesses. Another compressor that I love using for pianos is the Manley Varimu style compressor, and this is an example. Again, I'm using the high pass filter sidechain. Again, I'm compressing very mildly with a slowish recovery and a medium attack. Basically, with pianos, you don't want to be able to tell that there is a compressor working. If you hear it, most of the times it sounds unnatural, it sounds strange, and it sounds very congested. So this is the third tip. Let's move on to the fourth tip, and the fourth tip is taming overtones with dynamic EQs. With pianos, they are real instruments, so it might be that the player hits a note in a very specific way, or the piano is not really even, and some notes just stick out, or you have some resonances. In this case, it's a very good idea to use a dynamic EQ to treat these problems. For this specific example, I don't have any issues like this, but I'm going to show you how it works. As you can see here, I have a dynamic EQ, and as you can see, I've activated dynamics. And I'm going to show you, for example, if I play this C here, let's say that this note, my player hit it really hard for most of the performance. Now, if I add this, as a standard EQ, as a static EQ, I'm going to completely take the life and the low end and the body out of the sound of the piano. See, it already sounds nasal, it's not very good. But if I activate Dynamics EQ, this EQ is going to work only when this note gets hit really hard. And this is very common in pianos. So let me show you. I'm going to play something that doesn't have this problem, okay? And I'm going to decide from which level and over we're going to have this Dynamics EQ working. So I'm going to pull down the threshold. That's good. So now you will see that when I play softly and I don't hit this note really hard, we're not going to sacrifice the body and the low end of the piano, but when this note gets hit, we're going to have the dynamic EQ tame it. Let's play something. See, it really grabs this note. If I remove this and I disable it, see how it tames this note. The same goes for some resonances that you might have in the mid-range. So let's say that there's a note here and my player played it a little bit louder than they should. This one. So now I can actually go here and find this note, and I'm going to try and activate the dynamics, and I'm going to reduce it now. See, I'm not touching it when it's soft, but when it plays harder, we get the reduction. I mean, for an instrument that's so special like the Swiss Grand 1860, I would probably keep the EQ and compression to a minimum, to be honest, because it's just so... I would like to keep all the dynamics. And the last tip that I want to share with you today, and this is something that I get questions about all the time, is all about using limiters with pianos that are so rich. And I would say if you can avoid using limiters with pianos, then please avoid using limiters with pianos if you can. That's because most limiters, and there are very few exceptions of limiters that handle pianos well, most limiters do not handle pianos very well. So most of the times if you push a piano into a limiter, you will get distortion, you will get some weird artifacts that are going to be even more pronounced when you take your music and you post it on social media, when you post it on Instagram and platforms like this, where people are going to listen on their smartphones. This is where all these artifacts and distortion is going to come out, and it will be really unpleasant. I would say plan ahead with your mixing so that you don't need to use a limiter for your piano. It's better that you use multiple compressors if you have to, or if you need to use a limiter, use it to just limit a couple of dBs tops, not more than that. And another final tip, if you can, listen to the whole track in detail on headphones so that you make sure that you don't get any distortion or artifacts when you're limiting a piano. So these are my 5 tips when mixing acoustic piano. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed the Swiss Grand 1860. I'm going to leave you with a little piece, and I hope you make some great music with it. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.